Now, I made another musical mistake last week. I quoted the Kurgan, who was possibly quoting two other sources, but the original source to the quote, "It's better to burn out than to fade away," is actually from Neil Young, and it's from a song called My, My, Hey, Hey, so here is the part that I screwed up. One of my absolute favorite guitarists, artists, singers. I mean, I adore this guy, and I'm shocked that I didn't make that connection either. So here is my excuse.
Yeah.
Last week, on Wednesday, my fiance and I moved. On Wednesday. So my excuse is I had very little time to prep the show, and it will never happen again.
Yeah, it will happen again. It is true. Jay almost was not on the show last week because he couldn't even get his computer up and running. We had to bring him in by phone, but we made it happen.
What made it even a little bit more ironic is I was talking to Jay in the morning, and he mentioned that he was moving today, and I'm like, well, Jay, you know we're recording tonight, right? And you're moving? He's like, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. I'm just saying.
Don't move on. Podcast. I looked up Robert Johnson a little bit too because I wanted to find out more about him, based on everyone's reaction. And the story is interesting. But one interesting thing was, first of all, there's so little documented about his life. Everything is hearsay. Nobody knows. All the things that are said about, like, when you deal with the devil, obviously make a deal. All the stories surrounding that, when you read about it, it's like, well, we don't really know what happened, but this guy says this, and this other guy says something else. Apparently, though, one thing I found interesting was that someone who studies folklore commented that African Americans at the time frequently used the phrase, "I made a deal with the devil at the crossroads," and it was just like a saying, and it probably derived from an African myth about another dark figure who and that connection with the crossroads. So there's some cultural connection there, and that was a common phrase that people would throw around. So the fact that he used that phrase or would say that it's silly to think that it implies he was actually claiming that he made a deal with the devil at the crossroads.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. He might be as a joke, but then it took off and became this myth. Especially when he died, that tends to reinforce the myth. It's also interesting that, he died very young. He died in the 1930s, but he actually was forgotten until like the 1960s is when his music was almost rediscovered.
By Hendrix, man.
Also,
what happened to him?
Another, speaking of listeners sending us useful information, a listener, James Cook, sent me a link to a BBC program. You guys familiar with the show More or Less? Basically, a show about statistics and how they relate to everyday stories. They did a segment on the 27 Club as well, which I listened to. The one interesting bit that I thought that came out of that was that they were talking to a statistician. And if you look at just the life expectancy of professional musicians, it turns out that they have this peak of death within the first 5 years of hitting it big. And the average age at which a professional musician will hit it big is around 25. So if you figure most musicians are sort of becoming famous in their mid-20s and they have this peak of mortality over the next 5 years, that's right about 27. So it kind of works out. So there may in fact be this peak of death at 27. It may not just be confirmation bias. I thought that was interesting.
And also the statistician who was on More or Less was Matt Parker, who is the MC for London Skeptics in the Pub.